Hello everyone, welcome back to Garden Fever. I'm Corey Lefevre, your host, coming to you direct from northern Utah in the United States. Today we got a great episode for you. We're going to be talking about the orchid, more importantly how to transplant the orchid. I already did a video kind of breaking down the orchid in general. I'll have the link in the description, of course, but today we're going to kind of go over how to transplant them. With 2,500 species and scientists discovering new ones all the time, it's risen to become the most favored houseplant, or one of the most favored houseplants. I personally like them because they're edible. They're absolutely edible, from the flower to the stem to the leaf to the root. Doesn't mean the medium is edible that is touching the root, so be careful with that. But other than that, it's completely edible, including the vanilla plant, which most people don't know come from an orchid. So we have vanilla to thank for orchids. They're a beautiful plant. They're popular because of their gorgeous blooms. So with that, we will get into how to transplant. One thing to remember is that orchids are air plants, and they survive by attaching themselves to bark and debris. There are some species that will attach themselves to the forest floor, but most of them are up in the trees, and they sponge up the moisture and nutrients from whatever they're attached to, or the medium that they're attached to. So a lot of times when you buy them in the stores, they'll be packed in these plastic containers. You'll get some great blooms, but they're not really conducive in having great airflow, which is important. If you'll notice in this pot here, I have lots of holes on the side, but the plastic doesn't. So they're well drained, and so they'll survive in the stores and do okay. But for long term, you're gonna want to transplant them. So with that, let's get into the transplanting process and give you some visuals on what I'm doing, and we'll go from there. One of the things that I think is a common mistake when it comes to orchids is when you're transplanting, you want to remove the old medium. A lot of times it's peat moss, sometimes it's wood chips, which is what I'm using today. And you want to clean all that up and make sure that it's kind of a tedious process. So you're going to need a spray bottle. You're going to want a tray because it kind of gets messy. The pot, obviously, that you want to put it in, make sure it has a lot of holes, a lot of airflow. That's important. You also would need some sort of a medium. Peat moss is a popular one, or wood chips, and then of course the orchid itself. One kind of a tip here is you don't need to fully submerge the roots in the medium. A lot of people make that mistake. As long as it has airflow, it can be submerged, so don't get me wrong, but it's not necessary. Do not use soil. If you use soil, you will suffocate this plant. It helps to water it down and moisten up the roots so that they're more flexible, because they're kind of crisp if not otherwise, and you're more than likely going to break some roots, which is incredibly easy to do. You may even see me do it in this transplant. In order to tell if it's a healthy root, it usually has kind of a powdery white coating and green tip. Is the healthiest type of root that you will see. Doesn't necessarily mean that the root is dead if you don't see that, but that is a good sign of a healthy root. So when you're transplanting it, make sure you clean everything up, and then clip. Use sterilized clippers. I always forget to tell people to sterilize their clippers, but you do want a clean cut, and you want to cut away any dead roots that you see and make sure that it is out of the medium. You don't want it to rot inside of the medium. Once you place it in, how I do it is I usually put some of the wood chips or peat moss at the bottom, and then I'll place the roots in the best I can to kind of get the plant centered and balanced, and then I place wood chips around it and kind of fill it into the spots. Some interesting facts about orchids that a lot of people don't know is they're bilaterally symmetrical, which is kind of like humans. So if you were to cut them in half, they mirror each other on each side, which is kind of cool. There's some pretty funky looking orchids out there. A lot of varieties, a lot of species. Not all of them are beautiful. Insects love them. They're friends to insects. In fact, scientists believe that the design or the the way the flower is meant to actually attract a lot of insects, more than just bees or anything like that. And that's because it helps them have pollination and good pollination. When you're trying to propagate these, they're better to do through cuttings. Each seed pod, which is very rare, has millions of seeds. So if you fail at germinating the seeds, just try again. But the seeds can and are known to be very finicky and hard to germinate. So cuttings are the best thing to do. They grow in a wide variety of zones too, which they're one of the only, I shouldn't say the only plant, but they're a plant that is known to be on every continent except for Antarctica, although they are considered to be a tropical plant. The lady slipper is all the way up to zone 2, so there are some that are cold hardy, and then there's some that go all the way down to zones 10 and 12. So you really just need to find out which species is in your area and which one thrives in your climate. I'm not going to say this because I always butcher the names, but these are the more popular ones that you'll find in stores because their blooms last longer. There are orchids where the bloom will only last minutes. Orchids are known to be, or considered to be, kind of an expert or a finicky kind of plant that takes a lot of intricate care. This really in general is not true, but there are species that are very finicky. In fact, there's some blooms that will only last minutes before they disappear or wither away, and then there's others that can last up to 6 months. So because of that, the ones that tend to last longer are the varieties that are generally most popular in your nurseries and stores. They keep well. Like I said, they're edible and you can keep them in the refrigerator for up to 10 days. They're best for garnishes, desserts, salads. They even are put into cocktail drinks. I don't want to get demonetized, but it comes from the Greek word that refers to the area of male fertility. That's probably as close as I'm going to get to say to the actual word, but the Greeks used to eat it thinking that it would help them have a son and stuff like that. So as funny as it is, that is where the word orchid originated from. They can live up to 100 years, which I found that to be pretty cool too. So they're a very long living plant. Most plants, you get 10, 15, maybe 20 years of healthy growth before they reach their maximum. Some orchids can live up to 100 years. The kind of vitamins that you will find inside of them to eat is potassium, calcium, phosphorus, iron, magnesium, copper, zinc, selenium, B6, thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, and rolic. I hope I said that right. After you transplant it in and you get it going, one thing you want to do is water it down. Make sure it's not too packed in. You don't want to pack it down. I've noticed that the medium will sometimes get caught in between the leaves, like you'll see here. So I always clean the leaves off first and make sure the leaves are free of debris after I've transplanted, and then I will moist down the roots again and then get the bark chips to be moistened. One of the most common problems that I run into with orchids is that people don't understand or know how to rebloom them. There are several conditions or things that can cause a rebloom, and one of the problems is by it being indoors. Although it is a low light under the canopy type tropical plant, house light tends to be too low, that it's not bright indirect light enough to cause a rebloom. Another thing you need to do is cut the spike, which is the stem in which the flowers bloom from. You can do it right here, which is just above the first node, right after the flowers wither. Go ahead and clip it, and that can cause it to reflower. You can go lower. I've clipped it down by the base and still gotten another spike to grow. But I recommend at least going down a node or two and clipping it there. Thanks for joining me today. Thanks for your time. Your time is valuable and I do appreciate it. If you like this video, please like, share, subscribe, comment, and more than likely hit that like button. It does help with the YouTube algorithm. It helps me get noticed and I do appreciate it. I want to thank all my subscribers. You're awesome. And with that, I'm gonna go ahead and see you next time, and let's make this world a paradise, 1 yard at a time.